So it gives us very great pleasure to welcome Matt Haynes, somebody that we've known for quite a few years now. We've met a lot on the conference circuit around the UK. Great guy. And he's going to talk to us about, well, it seems a curious title for this talk, but it's around bringing your people along with you. I think is possibly the best way to describe it. So we'll give you the floor, Matt, if you want to share any slides you've got.
Absolutely. Yeah, no problem.
And we will shut the hell up and allow you to proceed. So
thank you very much.
Which is a rare occurrence.
I'll take the opportunity while I can get it. Absolutely.
We are running a few minutes late, but don't let that worry you. You just run the course of the time that you've got, your 30 minutes.
Excellent.
And best of
Yeah,
luck.
thank you very much.
All
I mean, I
right.
wouldn't dare try and stop any of you to interject, and I always do like a bit of banter for sure. But hopefully the slides are displayed now, and you guys can see them okay.
Yep,
yeah,
can.
Wonderful stuff. Okay, absolutely. So for those who don't really know who I am, my name is Matthew Haynes. I do try to get involved in the community as much. It's never enough. And a couple of years ago, I gave a few talks around intelligence, and that is a lot of my background. So I thought, you know what, we could try and bring that into this talk today. So it's all about interrogating your staff So I want to start by saying that your users, your staff, are your weakest link. They're the ones that are clicking on the links, and they're the ones that are causing organizations to become compromised. A mindset like that is antiquated and will only lead to failure of your security program. With those sort of concepts and those sort of approaches, I want you to have a think about what integration to interrogate or interrogating actually means to you. What sort of actions and thoughts come to mind? What images do you sort of see when you see it? And maybe you see things like this. This is typically how we sort of see interrogation. The spotlight put on you, the use of fear, and damage and injury is brought to us to actually release information. Effectively, that's what we want, or to comply, to actually use these attributes, these sort of skills, tools in the toolbox to actually get someone to do what you want them to do. So let's have a quick look at a description. So Oxford is saying interrogation is the act of asking somebody a lot of questions over a long period of time, especially in an aggressive way. But I like to actually think, well, yes, okay, that does come to mind with those images, but is there another way? And I want to try and show you another way. I have here are completely opposite images that we saw, but these are in fact interrogation techniques. We've got here warmth, comfort, support, caring, even seduction. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get the same outcome. We're trying to help those people abide or apply least information. Let's look at another description. So Merriam-Webster are actually saying that interrogation is the sending of an electronic signal intended to trigger a particular response. For those very technical on the line, probably think that maybe that's not really a human factor. That's due to related response, but ultimately it's interrogation, and we are kind of doing that today. And when we do that with our training, security awareness training programs, we are sending out training, and then we're quizzing them on it. We're asking them questions and expecting them to provide us with answers. We're effectively interrogating them. So if we look a bit further into sort of the way that we have, in a very simplistic manner, how we're actually trying to deal with it in phishing and threats that are coming from that. And we look at some statistics and what the objective from a training perspective. These are all sort of, I'm having a bit of fun with the camera and I was going a bit blurry. Let me just sort that out very quickly. There we go. So on average, emails coming through, of all the bad that hits the perimeter, 20% of that bypasses your security gateway on average, arriving in our staff mailboxes. So today, typically, your staff are about 30% susceptibility. So 3 out of every 10 of your staff are likely to click an average phishing email. We're not talking about highly sophisticated or spear phishing. We're talking generic, bog standard stuff. If your staff, on average, you get them down to about 13% susceptibility. And depending on the quality of the training and other factors, whether the engagement of your staff depends on how low you can get to that 13% and beyond. Now, our staff aren't where they were 10 years ago. They've evolved. 10 years ago, we would say, absolutely, our staff are our weakest link. And even though you could probably argue back then that wasn't the most appropriate thing to say, it was a lot more true back then than it is today. A week doesn't really go by where we don't talk about a breach or an attack or a compromise, a major news outlet. Our staff are a lot more switched onto this term of cybersecurity and phishing. So therefore, we need to be thinking about how we can further evolve that. Now, unfortunately, phishing becomes more sophisticated and also by volume. So the problem is getting worse, but our staff are getting better. So we've got a bit of a nuance here that we need to sort of compensate for. So the government, many of you are probably aware of this, as used a number of years ago by our government, so by the UK government. So the UK government recognises that cybersecurity is a very big problem. I think they recently reported about 27 billion cybercrime in the UK alone. And they want to try to compensate for that by creating new jobs, bringing skilled workers into that profession to help reduce that impact that is cybercrime. But the problem is this highlights a particular problem with the fact that although cybersecurity is awesome, I get very excited by it, and I'm sure the majority of people on the call do as well. We recognize how important it is. We're reliant on people that don't think the same way. We're reliant on people that actually think security is quite mundane and quite boring, and certainly not something they're interested in. But yet we want them to not click a link and compromise the business. So this particular poster got a lot of backlash, and rightfully so, because it's perfectly acceptable to be a profession of the arts or to be a profession of something else, because cybersecurity really isn't that big and really isn't that important for people. So what we need to try to do is have that understanding that while we do think this is important, we actually need to engage people who may not think the same way. And it all kind of goes back, typically our security program around questions and answers. We've trained our staff, and in some occasions, rammed that training down the throats of our users. And by doing so, what we're doing is we're creating a barrier. We're actually become more disgruntled. So we're creating further barriers and separating them and us. And with this idea of questioning and answering, we've trained our staff, and now we're going to quiz them, whether they understood the material we've just taught them. And we need to know this really from a reassurance perspective. Have they adopted that training? Is the training correct? Is it actually training our staff to become compliant, or actually ultimately so we actually become safer? But one of the with this is this really truly a good representation of actually an attack? This is knowledge, but we need more of a practical way of dealing with that. So a way that we can actually deal with this training is through phish simulation. And I'll go into that in just a moment. But one thing I want to say as well about the security training and question and answering is we do it periodically. And why do we do it periodically? Because of skill fade. And skill fade is something we need to be aware of as well. So when we train someone or just tell someone about something, it becomes to the forefront of that mind. So when you come to a decision process, such a link, or selecting what you're going to have for dinner, whatever the topic, whatever's in the forefront of the mind is going to help and influence that decision process. So that's where we get skill fading. And that's why we need to actually emphasize, almost on a micro level, that security is important, and it's something that needs to be aware of in that decision process during clicking links, going to websites, or whatever it may be. So in this realistic scenario, we actually want to sort of do phish simulation. Well, how do we do that? Well, what we do is we put on our hoodies, we sort of come one with the hacker, and we sort of start to simulate a criminal, obviously in an ethical way. And we're sort of sending our staff phishing emails to actually understand, yes, they've got the knowledge and yes, they understand the material, but what do they actually do in that real life situation? And I also want to be really, really conscious that not everyone's a dog lover. So people with cats can actually do the same thing. And, they can be involved with this phishing simulation. But while it is a proven metric and can be done in a very positive manner, there's a certain way to do it. And the other question around how do we do it, how far should we go with this mimicking of a criminal? So two major organizations have come out, and there's actually many other scenarios, but these two really do stand out quite prominently. They phished their staff, not an unknown tactic, but the way they went around it, and probably even the timing of it, probably wasn't the best way. They were basically their staff, you're going to get a bonus, or you're going to actually get a holiday bonus or a workers bonus as part of their program. Now, this is a particularly emotionally driven and sore point for many, especially the last couple of years for certain industries where money has been a huge issue for some, or even haven't worked. Really sort of jump on those heartstrings, you have to question, is that even ethical? And the NCSC actually massively discourage this type of behavior. And two things that come to mind straight away around this is that what a great way to cause your staff to become disgruntled and become an insider threat. They're already inside your organization. They've already got the opportunity. They may or may not have the capability, but you've just given them a sort of reason to do it, an intent. And the other thing as well is you're just creating barriers in between the security and the staff again. And it's the last thing that we want to do. We don't want to separate these two. While security is very good about putting layers of security in, it's one of those areas that we do that. We actually want to bring those staff as part of a cohesive manner. And because we actually want to understand our staff, we need to be very reliant on metrics. There are lots of solutions out there that actually can help understand those behavior metrics, but you actually want to go a little bit beyond whether they're getting it correct or incorrect. You actually want to understand the engagement factor. You also want to understand, who is getting what type of material correct, and also be mindful of that when they're in a certain profession, they may be more susceptible. So if they're in recruitment, they're going to be receiving a lot more documents. If you work in another sector, for example, they're getting a document might be quite a unique thing. So for them, they might instantly trigger into this is abnormal. So the way I sort of deal with this, I want to break this down into sort of two major areas. All about caring and all about skills. Now, the skills is kind of an area we spend in this sort of security awareness space, but caring, I want to sort of talk a little bit more around today. And when we do this, we want to actually try to create a number of 0 to 10. So as security professionals, I'm sure that we are all at number 10. I'm sure we all care about security and we all have the skills to actually do something about it. But we need to be realistic in our goals and our aspirations with our staff. Perhaps our staff are not even a 5, perhaps they're a 3. But that might be okay based on the threat. Our first point of call is to not be the lowest hanging fruit. So being a 2 might be okay. Our aspiration is to them up to a 10 as high as possible, but within a realistic and in a pragmatic manner. So care is broken into 2 elements, being the significance, what we call, and the relation piece. Okay. So the significant factor is the scale. Is this particular threat actually a big deal? The so what factor. We get compromised, we get ransomware, that's fine, we're backed up. We've got a backup to restore piece. The threat isn't as big. Or maybe we don't have very good backups and it actually is a bigger issue. Being significant and communicating that can actually cause, can be quite helpful understanding what the ramifications of a particular attack is. And then the relatability is sort of, while being aware of something is big, I know that nuclear bombs are a big problem, but where's the relationship to me? Is it going to happen to me? Hopefully, touch wood, unlikely, but there's a sort of different factor there. A really good way of dealing with it. So Maersk shipping containers were massively impacted by NotPetya. If you're not aware of this, it's a really interesting use case, and I'd highly recommend to go away and look into it. But we could even use this as a use case. Now, a shipping container, or sorry, should I say a shipping organization, as a in this simulation has nothing to do with us. So why would the threat that they went through impact us? Well, they actually got impacted, or the vector was Ukrainian software used for tax purposes. Well, we use that in this simulation, so therefore I care about that. And I've just realized that particular software is set inside my network and no longer in the boundary. And we've therefore, because it's inside safe, we have less controls, and we're not monitoring it. So now I can actually understand the relationship and the significance of that particular scenario. And then skills. I don't know about this too much because it's spoken about quite a lot, and there's a lot of material online that can really go into this. But it's basically how to spot phishing. And this is an ever-increasing list, and it gets kind of complex. So the main point of here with the identification piece is try not to make it too complicated. Very, very difficult, I appreciate. But we're dealing with people who may even struggle to turn a computer on and off. When you start to explain to them about the differences between puny code and other links and foreign characters, they may not understand it. And they may also, because they have much interest in it, not willing to invest that time to learn that. Told our staff that something is really important and it's really important to them and how to spot it, we need to tell them what to do. And this is very organizational specific. It might be click a button and report. It might be forward that email on. It might be just to tell someone, call up, delete the email, tell management, whatever it is in your process, just make sure you disseminate that to your guys. So just sort of a couple of last little points, and then we're sort of wrapping up. So don't forget we're dealing with a human being here, not dealing with a computer, and we're dealing with emotions, and we can impact those emotions through many different attributes, like we can when we interrogate someone. So we actually want to try and get someone to be happy and be in enjoyment, and that's the optimum space where people are engaged and willing to learn new things and be most productive. If we're in other elements, whether they're in an anger or a fear state, such as if you click that link, you're sacked, as opposed to if you actually spot phishing or reward you, you have to obviously question which one of those two is going to be more effective. It's not just in a short, but in a long time. Gamification is something that I want to mention as well. It's a feature, it's a functionality. It's basically the art of creating a game-like situation to elicit engagement. And gamification is fantastic, and there's lots of ways of doing that. So I would highly recommend that if you try to look at using gamification as part of your security program. So it's actually ultimately up to you on how you want to interrogate your staff to comply. You might actually want to do an open hand approach and be willing to engage in a very supportive manner, or perhaps you actually want to use a fear approach. It depends on you and your organization. But just be mindful that if you do use a fear approach, that your staff actually may leave you with something behind. So I hope that was really helpful, and I hope that sort of made you think about how to actually deal with your security awareness programs in your organization. As we're talking about the human being, I just want to also mention that we're doing some research with Bristol University. So if you want to be involved in trying to help understand humans within the office space, please sign up. And I will literally wrap up there. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope that was helpful.
It certainly was, Matt. And I tell you what, the overwhelming feedback in the Twitch chat is around do the right thing by your people, not to your people. And very much the sentiment is that this is a journey you've got to take people on, not push people down or push people sideways or out the door or any of that stuff. Because as a senior manager in my organization responsible for security, and we've spoken recently, as you will remember, for us, it's all about making people feel good about getting on the journey. Yep. Making them understand that it's our responsibility to equip them with the right knowledge, skills, and understanding to make the right decisions. It's not them that are those people that are ultimately accountable for a control failure. It's the people that apply the control. And often that's your GRC and your InfoSec, CyberSec people. So if you get an opportunity to read the Twitch, the open hand approach that you described is the more popular, and it seems to be the more effective one rather than the pistol. But it was a fantastic talk, really good. from somebody who clearly knows what they're talking about. So thanks ever so much. We really appreciate you taking the time on a Friday afternoon to come and chat with us. Yeah, have a great weekend, Matt, and hopefully we'll see you. Hopefully we'll see you soon, properly in real life.
Well, I'm going to enjoy a beer now, and I hope you guys enjoy one.
Thanks, man.
All the best.
All the best. Cheers.